got this weird crease in my hair. If that's gonna be annoying to you, I'm so sorry.
Won't nobody love you the way they should. Won't nobody check up on you, make sure you're good. Won't nobody check those body tremors for your neck.
Hi everyone, my name is Becky Park and I'm a part-time reseller slash full-time high school choir teacher slash mom of 2 kids, married. I don't know, I do a lot. There's a lot on my plate. And in today's video, I'm going to do a Q&A. I actually put something in my stories on Instagram asking what questions you had for me. And I said, you could ask about whatever you wanted. Nothing is off the table. And I put the same post on my community tab on YouTube as well. And y'all delivered. Y'all asked me 64 questions. So this is going to be like a speed round. Let's just get through it. And I'll try to be as concise as I can. Y'all know that's really hard for me, but some things I'll dwell on maybe if, it just needs a little bit more time, but we're going to try to get through these things really quick. And let me just say, a lot of you asked some really good questions, and I do think that by listening to my answers, you'll hear at least, just another perspective on how to do things for your reselling business. You can take it or leave it. I'm not saying that what I'm saying is right or like gospel truth, but I'm saying this is what I do. It's from my perspective, right? So if at any point you're like, oh, this is pretty cool, please hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please subscribe. Let's get into it. I try to kind of categorize by YouTube related questions, reseller related questions, entrepreneurship, personal questions, and then like money related things, personal stuff, and then just kind of end with miscellaneous questions. So I only had like a couple YouTube questions. The first one was from A Latte Good Finds from Instagram, and they asked, do you sing the intro song on your YouTube videos? I wish I was that good, but it's actually a former student of mine. Her name is Tiana Steele. She graduated, I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago. I think she goes by T Steele now, but she's moved out to LA after going to school for music, and she's been recording lots of albums and is now out there, doing her thing. I could not be prouder. So definitely check her out. I will have all of her links to like Spotify, iTunes, her YouTube channel. I'll have all those links down below because she has some really, really great songs, and I just am honored to have known her. Like, she's great. Let's see. I'm going to butcher some of these Instagram names especially, so I'll apologize. But Sandra D, that's me, asked, do you think you can make a full-time income reselling if you're not on YouTube? I know for a fact you can. And in fact, there are probably a ton of resellers out there who are doing amazing, like killing the reselling game because they're not on YouTube and because they're not on social media, because all of their time and energy is spent on just selling the stuff. And so absolutely you can. I just kind of ended up here because I started off by, being in the YouTube space and Instagram space, wanting to learn as much as I could and just like consuming a ton of information. And then I ended up kind of flipping over to the other side and doing content creation. It's a time suck though, let me tell you, and it takes a while before you see any money from doing it. So yes, there are people making a full-time income reselling and like doing super well for themselves. Okay, so getting into some reseller related questions, not that those weren't, but let's see. NP on a Budget asked, what got you into reselling? I feel like I've talked about this a few times in different places, but essentially it was kind of accidental. I just wanted to sell some stuff that my husband and I were no longer wearing. Tried going to Plato's Closet first. They wanted to give me pennies. Did a deep dive on Google to see if I could sell my clothes online anywhere. Some stuff about Poshmark came up, listed a few things, sold a pair of my husband's shoes within like 2 weeks of listing them, and I was hooked. And here we are, like 3, almost 4 years later, still at it. One Stop Reshop asked, what has been your biggest reseller fail? There are just too many to have to only choose one. I think that, what I wish I would have been better about from the beginning, because now it's just kind of like habit and it's hard for me to break. I wish I was more strict with myself at the beginning about what I would allow myself to list. So, when I first started, I just wanted as many things in my closet as possible. So I'd like have a shirt that I no longer wore anymore and it'd have like a couple holes and stains in it. And I was like, yeah, I'll just go ahead and list it. Even if I make $5, it's worth it. My kids would outgrow their clothes. And again, there'd be like holes and stains. And I'd be like, I'll list it. Like someone will buy it for $5 and I'll make a couple bucks on it. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I'm saying it definitely became habit. And I can't really look at a piece of clothing that's sellable and not sell it. Like, it just hurts me because I don't like the idea of sending stuff to Goodwill and not knowing if it'll make its way to another home or if it'll instead just end up in a landfill. But I feel like maybe there are other ways to, give clothing second life without having to be the one to list it myself. Because here I am, 3 years later with stuff from that very first year of reselling that still have not found new homes and are instead sitting in my bins over there. So I don't know, maybe that's my biggest reseller fail, is just not setting higher standards in terms of what I will list from the beginning. Same person, One Stop Reshop, and Molly W2727, and I'm going to butcher this, Fao, Dale, and Lee, and Jane Doe from YouTube, they all asked, will you ever go full-time reselling? I'm just going to say I'll never say never. That's all I'll say. T Grace 7215 asked, do you have daily listing goals? I'm a first-year teacher. Oh my gosh, like, are you okay? Are you surviving? My prayers are with you. And I'm learning how to balance everything. Do I have daily listing goals? Absolutely. Like, I would love to list 10 things a day. This past week, today is Thursday. I don't even know if I've listed 10 things this week. And that's just what happens. Like, when you have other callings in your life and it's not just reselling, it's hard to stick to daily listing goals. Even if, reselling is all that you do, even if you're a full-time reseller, there are still going to be moments in your life where things pop up and it's hard to stick to your daily listing goal. But I think even more so when you have like another full-time job that is pulling you away at times, sometimes a lot. So yes, I have a listing goal. Do I always meet it? No. Like, there are so many times that I do not. And, the world keeps spinning. Eden Galanshinsky. What are your thoughts on reselling American Eagle or Aerie on Poshmark? Love it. I love selling American Eagle. I have listed Aerie. It's been really hard for me to move, but American Eagle denim, I will list and sell all day long. I hate everything else that is American Eagle because it does not move for me. However, I did sell an American Eagle like utility jacket for men, like a big honking thing with tons of pockets and stuff, for $75, and I got it at the bin. So I think American Eagle outerwear, especially for men, can do well. Denim, great. Everything else, no thank you. Steph Lichter asked, do you keep completed listings in a draft bank or list everything once the listing is ready? I have a hard time waiting to list things because things can't sell if not listed, but is consistency more important? So I think what Steph is asking is, going back to the question of like, do you have a daily listing goal? What if, your daily listing goal is 10, but you're able to get up 15 listings? And I think what Steph is asking is, instead of, having all 15 listings go live, do you just have the 10 listings and then you keep 5 kind of like as backup in case there are days or weeks like the week that I'm currently in when you just can't get to listing? Steph, I think having a draft bank is such a good idea. I am like you though, where like I've never just really been able to build one up, or like if I was in a groove and I was listing a ton, I was like, I just rather have these go live now so that they can sell. I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer to that, but man, if I had a draft bank, then this week wouldn't have been so poopy in terms of getting listings up because I'd be able to pull from my reserves, which I have none of right now. I did do something similar to that though before going on vacation this past summer. I kind of had a draft bank, if you will, and just kept things in draft form. On eBay, I literally just scheduled for them to go live on certain days while I was on vacation so that I didn't have to list while on vacation. So when my brain is like functioning and I'm able to think ahead, sometimes I have done stuff like that, but day to day, not something that I'm able to do at this time. But if you are, good for you. Kilos and Coffee and Inspired at Heart both asked, what do you know now about reselling that you wish you knew when you started? Or like the way that Inspired at Heart asked it was, what do you wish you knew when you first started reselling on Poshmark? This is probably not the kind of answer that you were looking for, but I kind of wish I had fallen into reselling without falling into the social media side of things. Not because I don't love social media and the community that I have and, getting to know all of you, but because there are times when social media is just not good for my mental health. And what I mean by that is, while I got into social media to learn about like what brands I should be picking up and about strategies and stuff, a lot of what's happening on social media too is people kind of like trying to one up one another. And I'm not going to say that like I've never played a part of that game, because I definitely have. But I think it's just been really hard for me at times not to feel bad about myself because other people are doing so well. And then to not feel worse about myself because I can't 100% completely like be everyone's biggest because I can't like be everyone's biggest cheerleader, and I am like, off in the corner having a pity party. And then it's just this spiral of like, you're an awful person. And like, well, it's something that I've been working on. It's something that I try to be as transparent and honest about, because I can't imagine I'm the only one that feels that way, but I wish I had known to take a step back, maybe even before I flipped and got on the content creation side of things. And furthermore, like, I'm just not really good at self-control, and I feel like, I allow it to be such a time suck sometimes. So I wish I had known back then that like it didn't really matter how many Instagram followers I had, or like how many, this or that. Those numbers don't necessarily have a direct correlation to how successful you can be as a reseller. And like I said earlier, there are people killing it who have no social media presence, and like that's largely part of the reason as to why they're killing it as a reseller. So that's probably not what you were looking for. You were looking for like sourcing tips or something, but that's my honest answer is, I would save a lot more time and head and heart space had I not gotten so deep into the social media side of things. So there you go. Part-time privateer asked how to get Poshmark to respond to inquiries when your listings disappear. Crying emoji. I wish you all the luck in the world. I'm so sorry. Poshmark does not have good customer service or just good like response time, especially when they have to deal with issues. If you're emailing Poshmark to be like, Poshmark, I love you. You are amazing. They're like, oh my God, like, thank you. Like, I feel like they would respond right away. But when you have like an actual issue that needs to be resolved, it's like they're ghosting you or something. It's very tough. I have heard that people have more luck directly like DMing them or even tweeting them. But like the email that they have, I don't know. I've not heard good things. So I hope you were able to get your listings back. I really do. Let's see. Mel P0308 asked, how do you handle lowball offers? For example, if they're less than half your listed price. I personally never decline an offer. I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, but I don't want to be the one to shut the door to a potential sale. Just yesterday, I had a pair of shoes listed at 75. I think someone offered me like 20. I sent back a really petty counter offer of like 70 or something, and they kept creeping up. But eventually we met at 55 and I made the sale, and I was okay with 55. I was not okay with 20, but had I just immediately declined, I wouldn't have made that sale. And so for me, I don't like to decline. I don't take things personally. Honestly, if I were not on YouTube and Instagram, I would probably be a lowball offer sender. And the reason for that is because people on YouTube often talk about how they will accept low offers sometimes, like because they've had this item for like 10 years and they're just so excited to get an offer on it. They would have accepted a $5 offer. You hear stuff like that and you're like, I don't know how this person feels about this listing. Let me just send them a random offer and see if they'll take it. And if they don't, then, I'll come up and I'll be more reasonable. But I feel like I would be that kind of lowball offerer. Is that a word? But I'm not, because I feel like people will be like, oh my God, like Becky Park just sent me an offer that is 10% of my asking price, and I'll get blasted and I'll get canceled and I'll, so I don't do it. To be honest though, like I would be that person, and I'm so sorry that I would. I told you that I was going to answer all of your questions and that I was going to be as honest as possible. All right. Kendall6067 Posh asked how to handle Poshmark cases. First and foremost, if it truly is my fault and I can see that, in the Poshmark case that's being opened, I don't try to fight it. If anything, I just say, please let them do the return, because I don't want people to be stuck with something that they didn't think they were getting. Like if I put the wrong size in the listing, or if I missed a flaw, like there's a rip in this item that I didn't see, I'm not going to fight it. Like, and I'm not going to be upset at this person for opening a case. Like they have every right to do so because I didn't deliver what I said I was going to. Now, if it's something like, the person is saying it doesn't fit them or they just don't like it, I don't even bother commenting, because I already know Poshmark's going to take my side, or they are supposed to, because of the fact that they clearly state that people cannot return stuff based on fit. So for me personally, I don't respond, and I've always had my funds released to me. I have been hearing that Poshmark has not been so amazing at adhering to their own rules as of late. So, that kind of stinks. But for me, I just like don't, again, want to give up that like heart and head space to like get upset over stuff that at the end of the day, Poshmark's going to do what they do, But yeah, for me, I just try to be as cordial as possible. I haven't had any crazy stories. Not that I can remember. Maybe I've like repressed them and blocked them, but yeah, I don't know. My friend Soul Inspired Seller, Nicole asked, do you use Poshmark VA? And if so, what are your thoughts? I do use Poshmark VA. I just started maybe like a month and a half ago or something like that. I like it a lot. One thing I don't like about it is that, you have to have your computer open for it to run. And sometimes I'll forget and I'll shut it. Or sometimes I'll have press something wrong, like you can ask it to continuously share your closet. And sometimes I'll forget to turn that feature on. And so it'll share my closet through once and then just kind of stop. And it'll be a while before I realize that that's what happened. So it's a little bit more maintenance than having a sharing company just share my closet for me. That was like 100% hands off. It was also like 90% more expensive. So I'm saving a lot of money with Poshmark VA. I also like how Poshmark VA sends out offers to likers and you can tell Poshmark VA when to do it. Again, there are some caveats with that. And that's a question that someone else asked. Let's see. Lucky Stars 228 from YouTube asked, how do you manage bundles using Poshmark VA? It automatically sends offers for likers. And I feel like it's a bit much when people like several items and they receive the individual offers. I feel that 100% because before Poshmark VA, if I saw that someone liked a bunch of items, what I would do is I would put those items in a bundle for them and then send them the offer that I felt comfortable with. And I made a good number of sales doing that. Whereas, if someone likes a bunch of items, what Poshmark VA is going to do is just like slam them with offer after offer because that's how you have it set up. Now, that being said, yesterday I had Poshmark VA sending out offers of 10% off with discounted shipping and someone liked 2 items and they got that same offer twice. So what they did was they went ahead and put those 2 items in a bundle. They sent me an offer on those 2 items at 10% off with discounted shipping. And so they basically were like, look, let's just do this as one transaction. So I really appreciated that they did that. Most buyers, I feel like, especially people who are newer to Poshmark, wouldn't know to do that. And I agree. Like, I feel like that could be kind of overwhelming. So for me, I turn off the offers to watchers feature on Fridays and Sundays because Fridays and Sundays are closet clear out. And I would rather on those days just message people who like items and use my closet clear out method. And I will link that video right here. It is a little bit more labor intensive, but it has a little bit more of a personal touch. And I do make a good number of sales using that closet clear out method. So that's what I've been doing is just turning off Poshmark VA offers to watchers on Friday and Sunday. But I do like it. I do recommend it. And if you wanted to try it out and save 20% off of your first payment on Poshmark VA, you can check out my coupon code down in the description below. I get a kickback. You get to save 20%. So yeah, let me know if you use Poshmark VA and if you're enjoying it. Thrift and Lindsay asked a few questions, but one of her questions was item that you've regretted selling, whether it was because you priced it too low or you just loved it, etc. I don't know. I'm sure there's something, but I can't think of something off the top of my head. I feel like there are some video games that I let go of for way too low, but also like I don't care because like I'm just glad that they're gone. So I don't think so, not really. Mrs. A. Hayward asked, what do you consider to be an acceptable profit margin if I'm making money on it? No, I mean, I like to make at least a $20 profit on something. And sometimes I'll pick something up or list something knowing full well that that's not going to happen. But that's usually my goal nowadays is to list things that are going to make me $20 of profit. Laura Grass asked, what is your process for sending offers? How often and how long after someone likes it? So I do use Poshmark VA and I have it set up so that 4 minutes after someone likes something, they're going to get an offer sent to them by Poshmark VA for anywhere from like 10 to 15% off with discounted shipping. I play around with it. Obviously, the higher the discount, the more success I feel like, the offers have, but that's what I do. Shop Kelsey Farver asked, what is your favorite item or sale you've sold since starting reselling? See, that's another hard one. Like, I feel like I've just sold so many things and I can't remember one that I was like super excited about. I guess a category that excites me, which is like kind of silly, is kids' clothes, especially like my kids' clothes. I just have such a weird thing about my kids' clothes. I think I just get really emotional thinking about their clothes like going to a landfill. Even like, we give a lot of hand-me-downs to my nieces, a lot of like my daughter's stuff, and I get so genuinely excited and happy when I see them wearing her clothes. Like, and it's like almost every time that we see them, but every time I'm like, oh my gosh, like they look so cute. And, I have the same feeling when someone buys something from any of my reselling platforms that once belonged to my kids. It just brings me such joy. So I guess that. Stylish Threads me asked, how many listings do you list per week? It depends, like if I'm really like in the zone and I've got all my ducks in a row and there's not a lot going on in other areas of my life, man, sometimes I've gotten like, 100 listings up in a week. This week, yeah, I think I've gotten like 7 things up. So we're struggling. Most Iconic asked, which season makes the most sales for you? This should be an easy question for me to answer, but I don't know off the top of my head. I want to say like the winter months. I'm pretty sure it's the winter months, but like I should know that off the top of my head. Drama Reed asked, how to make eBay less confusing. I sold my first item there and postage was so shrug emoji. Yeah, shipping on eBay is hard, except it isn't. Like, it isn't if you just do it a number of times and you just do it over and over again. And that's how you make eBay not hard, is you just do it. And I know that that's so much easier said than done. And I know that's really annoying and kind of like obnoxious advice. But really, I like claimed when I first got on YouTube that I would never do eBay. I was like, it's so scary. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to make so many mistakes. And I, said that for like 8 months to a year. And then finally I was like, I'm going to do eBay. And I did it. And I was like, oh, this isn't so bad. It's annoying. Listing over there is annoying. And yes, shipping can be annoying. But once you do it, like honestly, 10 times, you're going to be like, what was I so scared of? So I would say just keep with it. Maybe watch like Ship With Me videos where people are selling on eBay, or, there are a lot of videos. But I think Josh from Harry Tornado just put out a video not too long ago focused specifically on how to ship on eBay. But yeah, if you just do it, it gets a lot easier, I promise. Julie Springer from YouTube asked, a topic that I would love to have someone cover and probably have but haven't found, your pricing strategy between all platforms. Do you set a price and use it across all platforms, or do you set your price higher than comps to allow for negotiation? This just has my brain going in too many directions. Love your videos. You are such an inspiration. Oh, thank you, Julie. That's very sweet of you. So I have a set price, and what I do is, let me like think through it in my head. Well, first of all, do I price up a little higher than comps because I want to leave wiggle room for negotiations and stuff? Absolutely. On most things. Some things I know that it just makes sense to price it at the price that it will sell at, because otherwise it won't sell, because that particular item is so highly saturated on reselling platforms to begin with. So, if you have a video game and there are like 80 other of that same video game listed, that's not a good time to be like, well, let me price this up a little bit so that I can leave room for negotiating. Like, no one's going to even look at your video game because everyone else's is cheaper. You know what I mean? But when you're talking about, you have a dress and there's only like 3 others of that exact same dress listed and none of them are in your size, you get to price up a little bit, because there's literally no other dress for someone else to choose from and be like, well, I found a cheaper option, right? So even if comps say, well, this dress has only traditionally been selling for $50, you can price yours at $75 because at that moment, yours is the only one listed. And then on the flip side, if I have an item and I'm like, I just want this out of my house as quickly as possible, maybe it's like really big, taking up space, whatever it might be, you just price a little bit lower than what everyone else is doing, and most likely your item is going to sell first. So, those are all of the things that I take into consideration. Most clothing pieces, I do price a little bit higher than everyone else just because I want to leave room for negotiation. I do run sales pretty frequently, so it's like, the price will drop down again to be competitive anyway. And then as far as your question regarding like, do I price differently based on the platform? Yes. So, I'll pick a price. Let's say I have a dress, I have it priced at $50 on List Perfectly, and then I go to cross list them to a bunch of different platforms. Poshmark, I'm usually going to price it at its highest because that's kind of the culture of Poshmark, is for people to send offers. Like, people are typically not buying things at your full asking price. So $50 is my higher kind of marked up price. When I go over to eBay, depends on the item, but usually I keep it at the same as what I had on Poshmark because I do run sales on eBay. On Mercari, I will start it at the same price. However, on Mercari, I utilize their smart pricing feature, which means that you can give Mercari a floor price for any listing, and Mercari will slowly drop the price of your item every day until it hits that floor price. So I will list at like my goal price, but then I also have like a more realistic, like, okay, but if someone offers me this, like, I'm okay with that. On Kidizen, sometimes I will raise the price because their fees are pretty high and I'm offering free shipping. So I raise the price to build in the shipping costs. On Shopify, I drop the price by 20% because Shopify is where I'm offering my lowest prices, since we're for the most part taking out any platform fees and whatnot. I think that's all. That's where Facebook Marketplace. Sometimes I'll drop the price because their fees are also extremely low. And because Facebook Marketplace, the culture over there isn't really for people to send offers. Every once in a while people will, but for the most part on Facebook Marketplace, people are just buying your stuff outright too. So you want to be priced competitively. So that was a really long answer to your question, Julie. I hope that helped. Ricardo I, one of my favorite resellers in the world, asked, on the rare times when you made a shipping mistake, what were the primary reasons for the shipping mistakes and how did you adjust your shipping processes to prevent the same mistake from happening again? Sunglasses emoji, peace sign. My biggest shipping mistake, and I don't know if this is exactly what you mean, so if not, I apologize, but the biggest mistake I make is not having the item that I'm supposed to ship out. I will accidentally not delete the listing from all of my other platforms once it sells somewhere, and then it'll sell again on another day on another platform. When that happens, I reach out to the buyer, I explain exactly what happened, and I say, for the inconvenience, you can either pick something else out from my closet or store. Let's say it's like a $25 item. I'll say up to like a $30 or $35 value. Like, I'll make the value a little bit higher. And then I'll also obviously say, or I can just cancel the transaction for you. 9 times out of 10, they say, I'll just cancel the transaction. Every once in a while, I'll get someone that finds something else, but usually they're canceling the transaction. So that way, I'm communicating, I'm trying to help find a solution. I'm very apologetic. But in terms of like, what am I doing to make sure that that doesn't happen again? I'm just trying to be more careful. But like, even today, I think a sale came through on Facebook Marketplace. I don't think I have the item. I'm going to check, but I'm like fairly certain that this thing sold. So, when you have a lot, you're going to miss some things, and you just have to be ready to do some apologizing and butt kissing. And that's just how it is. So, Ricardo, let me know what you do. I'm very curious because you're a pro at this. Emily Voorhees from YouTube asked, how often do you lower prices on Poshmark? Never. I don't actually lower my prices on Poshmark, and that's because I'm consistent now with sending out offers, with Posher VA. But before that, I would utilize my closet clear out method, and every once in a while, I'll do like the bulk offers to likers and send out pretty steep discounts, but I don't actually go through and like lower prices unless during closet clear out someone tells me that they will buy my item if I lower the price. So never, I don't lower my prices on Poshmark. She also asked, how long do you usually wait before letting go of an item that you thought you would get so much more for? By this, I feel like she means, you have something listed at 75 because you're certain that it's going to sell at that price so quickly. At what point are you willing to let go of the item for much less? It depends, some pieces maybe I have like some weird emotional attachment to for whatever reason. Some things I'm willing to do that pretty quickly, like if I just want to recoup my investment. That's kind of what happened yesterday with that sale that I was talking about, where I had it listed for 75, they offered me 20, 55, like on a different item that I had priced at 75, I probably wouldn't have let it go for that little. But that particular pair of shoes, I was like, that's fine. Like, you could have it at 55. It's not even like I had them listed for that long. I think I've only had them listed for like 2 months or something. But it was just one of those things where I was like, this is probably the right buyer for this, and this is probably the best I'm going to get for them. So let me just go ahead and move them. It's a lot of different things that you have to consider. I don't have a hard and fast rule like this thing's been listed for 4 months, so now I just have to accept anything that's above 50% off of, my full asking price. I don't have anything like that. She also said, how are you able to sell for such high prices on Poshmark? I often have similar items as you that sell for so much lower. Is it because of how many followers you have? I am a new seller, so she's been selling for 2 months, and have about 12,000 followers, and I worry that I am selling items for too low because I've had them listed for a month or so, but it seems like you will have things listed for years. I will, yeah. Also, I love your channel. You have my same sense of humor. And in parentheses, she put dumb. I mean, I guess my humor is kind of dumb. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I would call it dumb, but anyway, yes. So I am willing to hold on to things for longer. And that's why I will price things higher. And that's probably why things will sell at a higher price. I also am okay with pricing things high and waiting because, when you have good pictures and when you have good listings and you have good SEO, a lot of times you get sales from guest users through like Google Shopping, and they don't have the option to send you an offer because they're not like signing up for a Poshmark account and stuff. They're literally buying your item through Google, and they're just going to buy it outright at your asking price. And so because I've had, some success with those kinds of sales, I'm okay with pricing things where I feel like they should be priced, even if they're a little bit higher, and, waiting for people to send me offers or to buy it outright. And I think it's because I'm willing to wait that I get higher prices. That's not to say that that's the way you should run your business at all. And I remember when I first started on Poshmark, I was exactly like you, where like after a week, I was like, no one's buying this. Like, I better drop the price of this. And I would drop prices on things so frequently until it got just so dirt cheap. And I also feel like sometimes people won't buy things from you because they are too cheap. Like, they almost assume that there's something wrong with it. So I don't know, like, when you price something, try to be really confident in your price and stick to your guns a little bit, like definitely accept reasonable offers and whatnot. But I think it's okay to not drop prices on Poshmark. I really do. But thank you for your kind words. And I'm glad that we have the same dumb humor. Sydney Steele from YouTube said, because you cross post, how involved are you on multiple platforms? What level of active presence do you have on each of the platforms you use? And Amanda Green said, I love this question, curious too. I do cross list to 6 different platforms, and that's because I use a Chrome extension or cross listing software called List Perfectly. Talk about it all the time, have a video showing how I use it right here. And if you want to try it out so that you can be crazy like me and, be on 6 different reselling platforms, I do have a coupon code where you can save 30% if you use Becky Park when you are signing up. So with that being said, I know that even though I'm on 6 platforms, they're not going to all perform for me equally. So I focus mainly on the ones that, bring in the sales. So Poshmark, I'm like super active on there all day. And part of that, right, is like because of Posher VA, it's automated. They're sharing for me. They're sending out offers. Poshmark is like, wow, like you are on our site, 24 hours a day. And I'm like, yep, I have no life, but that's cool. So a lot of activity over there. And then on eBay, I try to be pretty active by doing things like ending listings that are going to relist anyway and selling similar and making some adjustments on those listings. I like to run sales on eBay. I do try to be pretty actively present on eBay because eBay has also, historically performed pretty well for me. And Mercari is another one that I'm paying a lot more attention to because as of late, it has really stepped up for me. And so I'll do things like, you can promote 10 listings a day. I think smart pricing helps with, daily activity because, the prices of items are dropping. And just even like when I sell stuff, every day I will use List Perfectly to delist items from those platforms. And that's activity too. So, I'm pretty active, but like for the most part, I don't do too much extra stuff over on places like Kidizen or Shopify or whatever, because they just don't really make me that many sales. So Facebook Marketplace too, it's pretty easy to be active over there. You can renew listings pretty quickly and stuff like that. I don't know. It's like so hit or miss for me over on Facebook Marketplace, but I don't put too much extra effort into it. D Moore from YouTube asked, I've only been reselling for about 2.5 months and have sold 118 items on eBay. That's friggin' amazing. Like, you are doing something right. Good for you. My question is it okay to ask your buyers after you know the item was delivered if they would be willing to leave you feedback? I've only gotten like 58 feedbacks, but yeah, how do I go about asking them? Or like I said, is it rude? I leave my buyers positive feedback as soon as I print the label for them. Just curious on your thoughts. I don't think there's anything rude about it at all. I think it's all about, how it's asked. If you're sliding into their inbox all like, leave me feedback, like I left you feedback, why aren't you leaving me feedback? Like, yeah, that's pretty rude. But if it's more along the lines of, I see you received your item, I hope you love it, thank you so much for shopping, from my small business. If you have the time and we're satisfied with your transaction, I'd really appreciate some feedback as I'm trying to grow my eBay business. Something along those lines, I would be much more inclined to take the time to leave you feedback. I'm one of those like horrible people where I don't always remember to leave feedback. I do automatic feedback for buyers as well. Like when I ship something out, I have it automated where eBay will automatically leave feedback for me, because before Ricardo actually, who asked a question earlier, would remind me to make sure that I do that for my buyers, not just because he had bought stuff from me and he was like, why aren't you leaving me feedback? But because that's good practice, right? Like everyone's trying to build up their feedback. And if you as a seller can help someone by giving them feedback when they buy something from you, that's great. That being said, when I buy stuff, sometimes I'm really bad at remembering. So a gentle reminder like that and like a genuine thank you for patronizing your store, I would definitely be willing to leave you feedback. And even still, not everyone's going to. And along those lines too, I think another thing you can do is if you have a thank you card or a thank you sticker that you put on your package, you could leave something on there too along the lines of, if you're satisfied with your purchase, I would really appreciate if you could leave me feedback. All those little like gentle reminders I think would be helpful. And I personally don't think that they would be rude. Ms. Eva's Closet from YouTube and Stacy Flores from YouTube asked, how many active listings do you have on each platform? And did you notice an increase in sales the more items you have circulating? Right now I have a little under 1,000. I was sitting at over 1,000 for a bit, but had like a huge sale, in my Poshmark Closet and eBay store not too long ago and have not had the time to build back up to 1,000 yet. That being said, yes, I did notice an increase in sales when I, started pumping out more listings because, the more variety you have, the more things you have listed, the more things people can buy. That being said, you do not need to have a ton of listings up in order to make good sales. If you're consistent with listing and you're listing things that people want, you're going to find that it's hard to stay at like your ideal listing count because people are going to keep buying stuff. So like Lori from Mama with a Camera on Instagram, she only ever has like, I think under 300 active listings on eBay, but has like really great sales and like consistent sales and like a really great number as her 90-day sales total. I don't remember off the top of my head what it is, but like she's killing it because she's only listing things that people actually want. So it's really not about the number of listings that you have. It's about, are you listing things that people want? I have a lot of listings. I know that like a good chunk of those listings are pure trash. Like no one really wants. A lot of them are from when I first, not a lot, but there are some from when I first started reselling. There are some that, I've just been given for free. So I'll just go ahead and list and they will sell eventually. But there are a lot of long tail items in my closet and, store. And I know that and I'm okay with it. Pamela Matos asked, how do you plan what days to go thrifting during the week? Do you have a go-to thrift store that you usually score pieces in, or does it vary? Do you find that thrift stores have more pieces earlier in the week versus during the weekend? These are all really great questions. So how do you plan what days to go thrifting during the week? Just when I can. I can't operate on like a Monday is my thrifting day because of my schedule outside of reselling. It's just so crazy and intense. Usually what happens is I go somewhere that is near a thrift store, and so I'll pop in since I'm in the area, right? Like that's usually how it goes down. But I don't really have the luxury of being able to plan it out the way that you're describing. Do I go to a thrift store that I usually score pieces in, or does it vary? I live on a kind of college campus-y type town. There are not that many thrift stores. So it's not like I have that many to choose from. Like I said, it really kind of depends on like, what am I closest to? There isn't necessarily any thrift store that's like always above and beyond, like better than the other ones. There are thrift stores with better pricing. And I also really like to hit up my local consignment stores because I find that they have really great pieces and there aren't as many pieces with flaws on them. I also will, just try to see when different stores are running sales and do my best to make it out there when they are, but sometimes it doesn't work out and that's okay. And do they have more pieces earlier in the week versus during the weekend? I do find weekends, especially at like my local Goodwills, to be pretty dry and especially dry in the color of the week. So, but if that's the only day I can go, I go, because even if it's the weekend, they put out new stuff every single day. So yeah. Designs by Josie asked, do you use the beta version of List Perfectly or just the standard? Because I know the beta usually gets fixed first on issues happening and I'm not sure which is better. I'm too lazy to like stay really on top of things like that. So for the most part, I just do the regular. The Saving Squirrel, that is a great YouTube name, asked, how are you liking your adjustable desk? I'm thinking about getting one, but I'm on the fence. Thanks. I have like a standing desk from a brand called FlexiSpot. I'll actually put a little affiliate link for it down. I don't know why I said little. It's a regular affiliate link. Like there are no little or big ones. But anyway, I will put an affiliate link down in the description below for it. But they had reached out to me, said that they make standing desks. I love it. I think it's really great. Unfortunately, right now, it's really just acting as like a normal desk because I have too much crap on it. So I'm not really like doing the shipping there like I had intended because there's too much crap on it. I'm looking at it right now. And so I do my shipping over here because there's less crap here. But I gotta fix that. I gotta just clean it and then use it for its intended purpose. Linda Williams Beauty from YouTube asked, I would like to know how to keep better records of what I buy and sell. How do you stay organized? I use the List Perfectly inventory management system. I have a video about it. I will link it right here. It has been a huge game changer. It helps me stay organized in terms of knowing how much I paid for items, where I picked up the item, how long I've held on to it for, where it's listed. I highly recommend using that as your inventory management system as well. Made by B asked, what is the general consensus? Do secondhand stores approve of resellers buying all the gems? In my country, I almost feel like I have to shop like an undercover agent. Made by B, I want to know what country you live in. You asked a few questions and they were very specific from your perspective of not being an American or not being in America and, trying to resell somewhere else. So I'm very curious where you're from. But I don't know what the general consensus is. I feel like, the people at my thrift stores don't really care. I don't know what you mean by gems, I guess. Like, are we buying all the stuff that people can purchase to clothe themselves and, like buy clothes that they need to wear to work? No. I feel like, especially at my one of my local consignment stores, one of the women actually straight up asked me, she's like, do you resell or something? And I was like, yeah. And I think she was kind of like, meh. But like the other lady that works there, she loves when I come in because she knows that they're about to make like $200-$300. You know what I mean? And she knows like I am in it to win it and I'm going to buy a ton of stuff and help them move inventory. And that's the point of having a store, is moving your inventory. And so most workers that I have encountered are very happy to see me because they know they're about to make some money and they know that they're about to move some inventory. They don't care what I'm going to do with it. They're there as a business. They want to make a profit and I help them do that. Melanie O'Neill, piano music. That's awesome. I hope you're a piano teacher. Asked, could you show us maybe step by step how you find a stock photo and or description of an older item, such as something from Talbot's? This is a 49-minute video already, so I can't show you step by step how to do it. What I would say is I start off by typing something very specific into Google. So if it is a Talbot's scallop neckline, orange shirt with half sleeves, I will type all of that in. But if I'm not getting any hits, I'll start actually taking out some of the keywords, especially if it's debatable. Like if I'm seeing orange, but I could see how someone else would call it coral, I just take out the color completely. If I see half sleeve, but someone else would call it short sleeve, I take out the sleeve length completely. And I start kind of like broadening it almost. And sometimes I'll find it that way. Sometimes I'll also find stock photos by doing my search within Poshmark versus Google. I also just don't spend that much time looking for stock photos. The only time that I will actively go out of my way to find a stock photo is if the thing that I'm trying to photograph looks crazy on the hanger. Like it just does not look good on the hanger and you need to see it on a body. And that's the only time that I like go out of my way to look for a stock photo. I will sometimes use stock photos when I am listing like a Madewell piece or a J. Crew piece or a Torrid piece, because they make it so easy to find stock photos. It's not like I'm taking that much time out of my life to look for it because they already give me the style number on their materials tag. So yeah, personally, I would say if you can't find a stock photo, move on. Like you don't have to have stock photos to sell pieces. And in fact, I've heard a lot of people say they won't buy items if the cover photo is of a stock photo because they want to see the actual garment, not what it looks like on a model. Made by B said, I see a lot of resellers using stock photos. Are stock photos okay to use? No, technically no, they are not for us to use because someone else owns that image. I don't know all the legalities behind it. There are a lot of companies who will go after resellers who use stock photos. And so especially on eBay, you have to be really careful. And that's why I try not to do it that much. And honestly, a lot of times when I, am taking my pictures and comparing my pictures to stock photos, sometimes I prefer my picture because I feel like my pictures do a better job of showing what that garment actually looks like. Lachey with an exclamation point. So Lachey said, what apps do you use to edit pics and change background for Poshmark and eBay? I'll tell you in order. So when I take a picture, the first thing I do on my iPhone is I use an app called PicTapGo to use a filter called Lights On, and that automatically just makes the whole picture brighter. And then I will use the photo editing tools within iPhone to just like brighten the picture a little bit because the space where I take my pictures, I'm looking at it right now, it is a little bit darker. So I will like add additional brightness to my picture even after using that PicTapGo app. And PicTapGo, it's not free. I think it's like a couple dollars or something. So, I thought it was worth the investment. After that, I will use an app called Photo Room to delete the background of my pictures, to delete the background behind the garment so that you have a clean white background. Sabrina P said, what is your organization method for all your items? I have a video right here where I share my inventory system with you. I have like big clear bins and I have Ziploc bags just like these. And what I do is I have a number on the Ziploc bag. So it's really hard to see. This is bag 505. And so when I get new inventory, I'll put a piece in 505 in my List Perfectly inventory management system. I will, say what the item is. I'll say what the SKU is, which is 505. So when the item sells, I know that it's in bag 505. I pull bag 505 out of the bin that it lives in, and I take the item out and I save this for the next time that I have inventory that needs to get inventoried and put into a baggie. So that way, I'm reusing these like a billion times and I'm not being wasteful, or trying not to be. Made by B asked, watching the videos from across the world in a much, much, much smaller country. Again, what country are you from? I wonder how much of what is available at Goodwill, the bins, and other thrift stores are pure trash and not resellable, and how much are treasures to make a profit on. It seems the American people throw or donate clothes and shoes without wearing them much. You're absolutely right. We are a wasteful country. We really are. And we need to be better about that. That being said, I would say there's varying degrees of trash depending on where you go. So for example, at the bins, I would say the majority of that stuff is trash because a lot of it is stuff coming from Goodwills that did not sell at Goodwill, and there's a reason it didn't sell at Goodwill, right? So a lot of the stuff, I'd say a large percentage of the stuff at the bins are trash, and you got to do a lot of digging to find the treasures. At thrift stores, I'd say, I don't know, there's a lot of stuff there that I don't feel like they should even put out on the floor because they're flawed. They have rips, they have stains, they have lots of issues. They've been shrunk in the wash and you can't wear them. There's a lot of issues, and they'll still put them on the floor to try and sell them. But they're trying to do some quality control. So, but there's still a lot of trash that you're kind of having to flip through. And then for me, that's why I do enjoy going to consignment stores or buy sell trade stores, because someone's job is literally to sit there and look at everything and make sure that it's sellable and make sure that it's trendy and stuff that people will pay money for. So even still, there are things that will slip through the cracks and you'll see something with a huge rip in it. You'll see something with a huge stain, but it's a lot less than at the bins for sure, and even Goodwill. So that's why I enjoy going to those kinds of stores more. But you're right, Americans, we just like have too much, and that's why we give so much away, even with, tags still attached. Heidi Bergen, not sure if I'm saying your name right. Who are your favorite resellers to watch? Heidi, I'm going to give you a little bit of a cop-out answer. To be honest with you, I don't watch that much reselling content lately. When I do watch, there's just so many. And I'm scared to say any because I'm scared that I'll make people feel sad if I don't say their name. So I'm not going to say any at all. But there are a lot. I do watch a lot of people's channels. I just don't watch as much as I used to. I actually just really like to watch things that are going to make me laugh, because I think otherwise, I'm just too like, there's like too much anxiety or too much going on in my head, and I just want like an escape. So I'll literally watch like stand-up comedy. Like Dave Chappelle is my absolute favorite. Or Kevin Hart's really funny too. Or I'll watch shows like The Office or, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. 30 Rock is one of my favorites. So, I'll just watch things that will make me laugh, because I need that. I just need my mind to be in a good place. So I'm sorry, that's a little bit of a cop-out answer. Okay, these next set of questions are kind of more centered around like entrepreneurship, not necessarily just reselling. So Marlene's and Oval X, totally could be butchering that. If I am, I'm so sorry. What are some things that keep you going when you feel like giving up? That's a really good question. I think what works well for me is just allowing myself to take a break. So literally taking a nap, literally saying, today I'm not going to do anything. Because then what happens is I kind of miss it. Like, if I don't do anything reseller related for a day, I'm like itching to get back to my laptop to list, or itching to get behind my camera to film or something. And so, just giving myself a break, that's probably the best thing that I can do. Like just hang out with my kids, hang out with my husband, that sort of thing. Maggie meets Chloe on Poshmark. When should I start filing taxes? New to reselling. Okay, so this is going to begin a segment of like tax related questions. And again, similar to what I did to Heidi, I'm going to give pretty cop-out answers because I'm not a tax expert. I am like the farthest thing from it. I have a really good friend at my church who is our accountant. And so he just kind of takes care of everything for me. So when should I start filing my taxes? I don't know. You just have to be done by April 15th. That's all I know, right? Like, when should you start? Like as soon as you need to be done by that time. That's what I would say. So US and Choi family asked, how do you do taxes, or like the spreadsheets to fill out? Drama Read asked, how on earth do you make taxes easy? I don't. Like, what do you do to streamline? I don't like, I don't really know what I'm doing. One thing that I do is I save all of my receipts, and I now have a credit card that is dedicated solely to reselling. So every time I go sourcing, every time we go to the bins and we, fill up on gas, I'll use that card. Any business related expense, it goes on that card. So that makes it much easier than when we were using our personal credit cards and we'd have to go through every statement and like, okay, this Amazon charge, like, was that yours? Or, that was really difficult. But I do think it's helpful to have a credit card that is specifically for your reselling business. And I don't know, that's about as much as I feel comfortable sharing, because I am not awesome at this. Kendra Armstrong on YouTube asked, I'm curious on taxes as well. Oh boy. Okay. Do you pay yours quarterly or wait till the end of the year? And are you an LLC? Do you know more benefits about being an LLC? Thank you. Kind of similar to that, Nicole Alexandra Beauty asked, how do you do your quarterly taxes when you have a full-time job too? I'm in the same boat. Do you file your reseller taxes quarterly? And then when do you do your yearly for teaching? Do you just add in your Q4 reseller taxes? I will share with you what I have been told, and hopefully I don't get in trouble for it. So I don't have an LLC. I have an S Corp. I'm like considered a sole corporation. And the reason I went down that route is because my accountant told me to. He said that there were more tax benefits being an S Corp than being an LLC. I have seen this trend of other resellers also going down the S Corp route rather than LLC. I cannot tell you the differences between the two or why you should do one or another. Don't make any tax or money related decisions based off of the things that I am saying, because let me say again, for the people in the back, I am not a tax expert. I am the farthest thing from it. That being said, I listened to my professional in my life who said that S Corp was the way to go. And as a result, I don't do quarterly taxes. I just do the yearly one as well for my business. So to answer your question, Nicole Alexandra Beauty, I have to file for my S Corp, and then we have our personal one as well. I do have to tell my personal one about the S Corp one, I believe, but my S Corp one, it doesn't, the personal one has nothing to do with it. I don't know if that helps. I hope that it does, but there you go. Madeline Villa Alba. Again, I'm so sorry if I'm butchering that. How do you juggle being a part-time reseller and having a full-time job? Is it difficult at times? Yes, it's so difficult. It was very difficult this week because I couldn't do a lot of reseller related things and I felt really crappy about it, to be honest with you. It's really hard. And that's just something that we have to accept if we say we're going to do more than one thing that takes up a lot of our time. Our full-time jobs take up a lot of our time. That's why they're called full-time jobs. And reselling, at least the way that I do it, takes up a lot of time. Sometimes you can literally split it down the middle and say 50% of my time and energy is going to go to this and 50% of my time and energy is going to go to that. But usually real life just does not work out that nicely. And so it is really hard. And I don't have anything wiser to say about that than what I just did. Thread Level Midnight LLC asked a similar question. I'm in awe of your time management. So how? I don't know. I think it's like the more stuff I have to do, the more cognizant I am of not wasting time. I think that's one thing. I don't ever just like veg out. Like I used to so much in my younger years, like my 20s were all about just like vegging out, just like reading, just watching really dumb TV shows. Like that's what I did in my 20s. And now I'm like, I don't have time to do that. Like I have 80 billion things on my to-do list. And so I am constantly multitasking. And by multitasking, I mean I'm watching 30 Rock while I'm shipping, or you know what I mean? I try to fit my entertainment in while I'm getting work done. I mean, I know this sounds so cliche and stupid, but I literally write out a list of things to do. I try to prioritize the things that have to get done first. And once I have a plan figured out, I just wait for life to come and screw it all up with like a sick kid or, something, right? I think I just got better with it over time out of necessity. I'm so sorry. This is not a great answer, but that is my honest answer. Tara Lloyd asked tips on how to reflect on your first year of reselling and see growth in year 2. Tara, I would say like start keeping records of everything now. Start keeping track of your numbers, like how much profit you're making, how many items you're selling, what your sell-through rate is. Start keeping track of that now so that you can compare year 2 to year 1 and be in awe of how much you've grown. So that's what I would do. Melanie Boniel said, did you notice a big jump in sales after you started your YouTube channel? Yes and no. Yes, in that, a lot of people say this. A lot of people say when you have a YouTube channel, you just make more sales. That's not a lie. And probably where there's the most truth in that is in the fact that a lot of times when I post thrift hauls, I'll get people who message me and say, hey, I'm interested in that thing that you hauled in your video. That's something that doesn't happen to you unless you have a YouTube channel. I've also seen a lot of people do that in like Poshmark Facebook groups. They'll be like, I went thrifting. Who wants to see what I got? And they'll literally post like a picture per comment and people will respond and say, oh my God, what size is that? Like, I want that and I'll DM you or whatever. So I've seen people make sales that way and they're not like, on YouTube or anything. They're just using Facebook, which brilliant. Good for you. So yeah, to some degree, you definitely make more sales. But on the flip side, you have less time to actually spend reselling. So I think it kind of balances out, to be honest with you. Yes, you have a bigger audience and you're not confined to just your reselling platforms, but you're spending less time doing the actual reselling because you're filming, like we're an hour and 7 minutes, and then you're editing the hour and 45-minute video, and right? So Yeah. Sylvie Land and Amanda Green on YouTube, they asked, how many hours per week do I spend on reselling versus YouTube versus social media versus work? Amanda asked, how do you juggle being a mom and working? Any tips would be so appreciated. I always feel like I'm stressing out about work I have to do when I'm not working. And when I'm working, I'm stressing about not spending time with my kids. Crying emoji. Yes to all of that. So going back to kind of the first, how many hours a week do you spend? It varies every week, and it varies because depending on the week, there are different things that just need you more, right? So there are weeks when I'm like, oh my gosh, this week is so open at work and I have all this free time to really focus on reselling. Let's do this. And then a kid gets sick and your priorities shift, and all of a sudden you find that 90% of your day is just spent cuddling this little one, and it's exactly where you're supposed to be. Is it still hard not to feel guilty about the fact that you're not at work and you're at home with this kid and you're not listing and you're not photographing? Absolutely, but also you're exactly where you're supposed to be. This week I had a choir concert at school. I was at school for like 13 or 14 hours on Monday, and every waking minute that I had, in the days leading up to it, were dedicated to this concert. Was it stressful because I wasn't doing a lot of reseller things and I wasn't hanging out with my kids as much as I wanted to? Absolutely. It was so stressful, but that's what comes with the territory of having different things on our plate. So, what tips do I have? I don't know, don't have so many things on your plate. That's one thing. But, I chose this life, right? That being said, I try to do a better job, and today I failed miserably at this, but I try to do a good job of being fully present in whatever it is that I'm doing at that moment. Today I did a really horrible job of that. My family, we went to Target, and it was supposed to be about like looking at the toys with the kids so that they could figure out what they wanted to put on their Christmas list. And it was supposed to be about these different things. And instead there was kind of an issue that came up with like a YouTube video. And so I was dealing with that, and I was very distracted. And we came home and I realized, man, I sucked that up. Like I was just not present in the way that I should have been. So I was with my kids. I wasn't really with them. That I think adds stress when you're multitasking, but just sucking at both things. So my biggest tip would be like, be present. When you're with your kids, put your phone away, like run away from anything that will alert you to things happening online or whatever, and like focus on those kiddos. When you're at work, like really focus on work, do the best job that you can so that you can be proud of the work that you're putting out. Just focus on whatever task you have at hand. Zombie Brittany asked, do you have a routine that you follow to help you with time management? I could use any advice on coming up with a routine to maximize my time during the day when my kids are at school. Thank you for all that you do. I don't know. You have to kind of figure out what works for you. Like, for me, I try to start with something that will make me feel like I did something, and something that I'll feel better about getting off my to-do list. So for example, like listing, I'll just list 5 things so that I know, okay, I listed something today and that was really important to me, and now I can take care of these other things. And then I also try to prioritize too, like what are things that I can do, for example, when I'm like laying in bed waiting for my son to fall asleep, or when I'm in the car with my husband and he's driving. Like there are certain things I can do on my phone, like editing pictures. I can edit pictures and have a conversation at the same time, no problem, right? So I try to prioritize those kinds of things. But yeah, I don't know. You have to figure out what's going to work for you. Reb Cardile and That Mama Thrifts both asked basically what I do with the money that I earn selling, or like if I have any goals for the money that I make with reselling. To be honest with you, when I first started reselling, my husband and I were in a really kind of uncomfortable time of our lives where we were living a little outside of our means. And what I mean by that is, we were living in a house with a mortgage that was like a little bit of a stretch in regards to the kind of money that we made as 2 teachers. We had car payments. My daughter at the time was in daycare. There were a lot of costs and not that much coming in. It was a little bit of a stressful time. It was always this pressure of like, are we going to have to dip into our savings? Do we even have a savings at this time? But it was a little bit rough. So that has changed drastically because of reselling, because of YouTube, because of all of those things. And so we don't live paycheck to paycheck anymore, which is amazing. We actually have a savings account. And what we're trying to do now is figure out how to make the money that we have saved make more money for us. And so we're trying to figure out how we want to invest. We're playing around with stocks a little bit. And also my son, and this question comes up later, but my son does have hearing loss, and so it's been really great to be in a position where we can send him to a school that's attached to a hospital, and it is a school for students who are either deaf or have hearing loss. All of the teachers are certified to work with deaf children or children who are hard of hearing. He sees his speech therapist every day, and I am beyond thankful that we are in a position that we can send him there, because obviously it's not free. It's not cheap, and I don't think we would have been able to do that had it not been for reselling. So I am extremely thankful for that. And aside from that, yeah, we're just trying to learn how to have our money make more money. I'll share a little bit more about that too, like in the video that I do in early January, where I share about my goals for the year and stuff. But I have some big dreams in regards to the different business ventures that I want to take on. So stay tuned, I guess. This is a good time too, an hour and 15 minutes in, to remind you to subscribe if you haven't already, and to like this video if you've enjoyed just hanging out with me for so long and listening to me talk incessantly. I said that this was going to be speed round, and I really am taking my sweet time answering these questions. I'm so sorry. Okay, so now kind of diving into personal life questions. Debbie PW Resells and Monster Hunter 77, they both asked, where did you and your hubby meet? We met here in Champaign because we both went to the same college, although I don't know that we ever attended college at the same time because he's 4 years older than me, but we went to the same church, on our campus, and yeah, that's how we met, and we've been together ever since. Hope Through Photos asked, have you ever been on a mission trip? If so, where to? I have been on many missions trips, actually. Starting when I was in high school, we went to South America many times. I've been to Costa Rica, Honduras, Mexico. When I was in college, I went on a missions trip to Kenya, which was really cool. I do kind of find the idea of missions trips kind of problematic now, the idea of like, we have to go there and like fix things for them and save them and like whatever, but that's another topic for another day. But for me, the trips were really good and really eye-opening and just kind of helped me understand the world a little bit better. So I did take some really good and important lessons away from them, I think. Life Still Is, which is my former student Caroline. Hi Caroline, if you're watching. She asked, what are your favorite Christmas traditions? I wish we had more concrete Christmas traditions. I feel like we just kind of wing it every Christmas. But one thing that we do is we go to either Hobby Lobby or Target every year, and the kids pick out a new Christmas ornament for the tree. So we have some ridiculous ornaments on our tree, but we put them up every year, even the past ones. And that's one Christmas tradition. Thrift and Lindsay asked, teaching versus reselling, how are they the same and how are they different to you? Girl, I cannot think of very many ways that they are the same. I think there's a lot of similarities actually between YouTube, at least what I do on YouTube, and teaching. Reselling though, I don't know, not very much. How are they different? In so many ways. The biggest being that with teaching, it doesn't matter if you are the best teacher or the worst teacher, y'all are getting paid the same. It doesn't matter if you are the type of teacher that busts your butt and you are there all hours of the day, or if you are the last one to arrive in the morning and the first to leave when that bell rings, y'all are getting paid the same. That is one of the things about teaching that's kind of difficult for me to swallow. Whereas as a reseller, what you get out fully depends on what you put in. And that to me is really exciting. I like the idea of like, I could just do more and make more, right? That's not how it is in teaching. I think that's one of the biggest differences between the two. That and teaching, you are literally surrounded by people all the live long day, versus reselling is a very isolated and somewhat lonely occupation. So that's a big difference too. Ga412 asked, do your students know about your Poshmark and buy from you? My closet is USA Forever. A lot of them do, especially more of my like former students. They just like cared more about my personal life than I feel like my current students do. Like, for example, some of them will like follow me on Instagram and stuff, like my reselling Instagram, and they'll comment on stuff sometimes. You know, like some of my kids will hop on every single live that I do on YouTube. So yeah, some of them care a lot. And I have had like, I think one buy something from me, which is really cute. But like, she'll just be like, can I get that thing in your closet, but like not do it through Poshmark? And I'm like, yeah, I'll just bring it to school. But yeah, they're really funny. Like one of my students, every time she sees me, she's like, hey girl boss. And I'm like, okay, like we need to cool it with that. Or like, you know, I'll walk into a room and kids will be like, Becky Park on Poshmark. But I just try not to make a big deal out of it. And so they don't, but every once in a while it does come up. Tori Juarez asked, when did you find out that your son had hearing loss? I've noticed his hearing aids. We noticed at birth, when babies are born, they do hearing tests and he just kept failing them. So they had to see specialist after specialist. We actually saw an ENT who was like, oh, I think he's actually okay now. And we were like, yippee, only to like go to the follow-up appointment maybe like half a year later. And he was like, oh, it's not okay. And we were pretty upset because that's 6 months that he could have been getting services. And so we took him somewhere else and they were able to figure out right away like what was going on and stuff. So his hearing loss is mild to moderate. He will have to wear hearing aids for the rest of his life, but he doesn't need like cochlear implants or anything like that. Just the standard hearing aids that, you know, go into his ears. And he's really great about it. It's all he's ever known. So yeah, hopefully he continues to be great about it even when he's in elementary school. And sometimes kids are not so kind and he's going to a school that isn't for deaf and hearing loss kids. So we'll see what happens. And then finally, just kind of landing on some very miscellaneous questions, just like very random ones. Seattle to you asked, what is your go-to coffee order? I just get light roast coffee at Panera with creamer. That's it. So boring. I don't really like Starbucks anymore. I used to like their really intense like espresso drinks. Like, you know, I used to always get the caramel macchiato and, you know, they just have all this stuff. But now it's like too sweet and it tastes too like fake to me almost. So I don't really enjoy Starbucks anymore. I just keep it really simple with Panera light roast and just half and half. Or stock cold brew from just like grocery stores. Ugh, that's so good too with some creamer. The Phi resellers asked, what is your next dream vacation? I'm going on it next summer. My family and I were going to Hawaii. We're going to go to 3 different islands. We're going to Oahu and Maui and Kauai. So I'm so excited. I've been with my husband. I have not taken my kids and I cannot wait for Hawaii to blow their freaking minds. Like they're going to be like, they're just not going to know what hit them. I will have a video coming out about how we are going to Hawaii for like 13 days for like $60. That's what we're spending on the entire trip. I'll have a video coming out about that very soon. Faye, okay. So sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. Any advice for being a high school teacher? I have 1 year of school left before I become one. Oh my goodness. Thank you for going into this profession. Lord knows we need good teachers, especially now because people are leaving teaching in droves. But advice for being a good teacher, I would say figure out why you're teaching in the first place. If it's really just to like impart knowledge, then let that be your focus and that's fine. And there are kids who will really like love you because of that, because you just want to teach them the stuff and you're good at teaching them the stuff. For me, I got into teaching high school because of the relationships. I wanted to build relationships with kids, and I felt like the best way to do that was through teaching music. The focus for me really is not teaching the stuff. Like I do teach the stuff, but that's not my focus. And as a result, like I'm a lot more lenient than a lot of my peers when it comes to things like grades and when it comes to whatever, because I don't care. I don't care about that stuff. Because for me, it's really just more about like, how can I help you grow into the best person that you can possibly be? And that's my focus. And I do that through a lot of different things. The emphasis for me just really isn't on like, did you learn all this stuff? I think if you can figure out what it is that you are, then you can like stay in your lane and do your job and do it well without feeling like, oh, but I should be more like this or I should be more like that. You don't have to. Like, that's why kids have lots of teachers and they'll get what they need from other teachers and whatnot. I'm not saying if you're going to be the like I'm just going to teach them what they need to know type of teacher, that you should be like a horrible person and not care about your kids. But if you're not good at building relationships with your kids, you don't have to feel bad about that. Like, that's okay. It's, if you're going to be the one that just like really teaches them stuff and teaches them well, that's cool too. Just know what you're going to do and do that well. Thrifting Teacher said, what brings you more joy, teaching, reselling, or YouTube? I'm going to tell you what, they bring me different kinds of joy. But when I think about like what brings me the kind of joy that I think is the most meaningful, obviously probably teaching, in the sense like I really feel like I'm making a difference. On the flip side, I really feel like I'm making a difference on YouTube as well. It really means so much when you guys leave comments, letting me know things like, you really like put a smile on my face today, or you really made me feel okay about not being perfect and about making mistakes because you shared that and I made the same mistake today and now I feel better about it, or whatever. Like, that stuff really means a lot to me. But the truth of the matter is, you and I, like, you've seen my face, but I have not seen yours. You know what I mean? And there is something about that relationship that is made in person with somebody and being with them through thick and thin. And that's what I have with a lot of my students, because I have a lot of them for 4 years, and being able to have tough conversations with them. Like I yelled at a kid today and I let him know too, like, the only reason I'm having this conversation with you is because I care about you, is because I love you, because I would rather be doing anything else than yelling at you about this, like literally anything else. But here we are, because you need to hear this. Being able to like get to know someone well enough to be able to have those kinds of conversations, there's a lot of joy that comes from that. However, there is joy too in like building something like a reselling business and watching it grow and knowing I did that. There's something so powerful about that. And YouTube, kind of the same thing, like being able to build an audience, being able to, there's a lot of joy in all of it. So yeah, I could talk about that for a really long time. Life by Melinda asked, what is your favorite song to listen to or sing when you're just needing a little pick-me-up? This sounds so wrong, but I don't listen to a lot of music because I think I'm just like doing music all day. I actually, like I said, like to watch shows. I like to just laugh. But if I do turn on an album, it's most likely going to be Miseducation of Lauryn Hill or Tragic Kingdom by No Doubt. Those were like just my jams back in the day and still are. Sharon J asked, do you wear petite clothing? What brands? If not, why? Like, why don't I wear petites? For some context, I am 5 feet tall. I do wear petites if petites is offered. So some Anthropologie pieces, have petites. What brands do I wear? I don't even know, like Free People or that sort of thing. Like, they don't really offer petites, like, just like loungewear or like activewear. They don't usually offer petites. I don't shop at places like Talbot's or Loft where they do offer petites. I did shop at Loft when I wore like very professional clothes to work. I don't anymore. I literally wore this to work today because that's how people at my school dress. So yeah, I will wear petites if they offer it, but if not, I just wear, my size, like small, extra small. And then the last question came from my friend Steve at Resale Dojo. He said, top 10 reasons why Chambana is so great. Chambana is what we affectionately call this area. It's a combination of Champaign and Urbana. And Steve, I believe, went to college here, which is why he has an affinity for this place. So here are my reasons. Ready? 1, ILLINI, the U of I. That's a huge draw. Number 2, there is amazing food here. Like, some of the best Chinese food that I have ever had is here. We have good pizza here. We have good Thai food. Like, we've got good food here. Number 3, there's literally no traffic. We complain when we have to go to Target because it's going to be about a 17-minute drive and there's no traffic on the way there. It's amazing. Like, going to Chicago literally ruins my soul every time because of the traffic. Number 4, cost of living is cheap. Houses here are cheap. Gas is cheap. Everything is pretty cheap. Number 5, it is extremely diverse. And I'm not just talking about like the kinds of races that you see or ethnicities. It's diverse also like socioeconomically. Like, I feel like I have a good pulse on what America is like because of the town that I live in. And a lot of that has to do with obviously, the college campus, but also just because like it's just diverse in many, many ways. Number 6, we're close to Chicago, St. Louis, and Indianapolis. This has kind of a small town feel here, but we're near some bigger metropolitan areas, which is great. Number 7, there's a place called Curtis Orchards, which is an apple orchard, and we live close to it, and it's pretty great. It's a pretty great place for the kids. Number 8, community. I have really great community here. You guys have heard me talk about my church a lot, and you know how I'm always getting inventory from people at church. I love my school community, and it's good community. I only came up with 8 because while it's pretty great here, it's not the best. Like, it's not Seattle or anything. So I could only come up with 8 reasons, Steve. Don't kill me. Oh my God. My phone is saying that this video is 1 hour and 31 minutes long. That is very long. So now I'm going to try to edit this down to maybe an hour. I don't know that I can cut it down that much, but I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit more about me and my stance on things, my perspective on things. At the very least, I hope I just kept you company while you were doing something mundane like steaming or, photographing or something like that. But thank you so much for hanging out with me. Again, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. Happy Vlogmas, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.